Now, the next economic system we'll talk about is the command system. And as I mentioned, the command system, basically that government involvement is very high. And so in a command system, the government, sometimes you'll see it called the state, the government or the state controls everything. Okay, they own all resources. So there is no private ownership. So remember, in a free market system, on the other side of the spectrum, the private sector owned all the resources, all the land, all the capital. Well, in this kind of system, there's no private ownership. The government owns all the resources. They control everything. In this kind of system, everyone is told what to do. Everyone told what to do. So there's none of this self-interest going on like there was in a free market. Everyone is told what to do. So you might graduate, and not only are you going to be told to be a farmer, but you're going to be told what good to produce. So you got to become an apple farmer. And then further, you're going to be told how many apples to produce per day, per month, per year. Right? So you're going to be told what to do in all aspects. So an effect of this is that there's actually going to be low unemployment. Everyone's going to be doing something. It's just you might not like doing. It might not be your choice of what to do. You're told what to do. But there's going to be low unemployment, so there's going to be low inequality. Right? So in a free market system, there was lots of inequality. In this kind of system, because everyone's told what to do, everyone's pretty much the same person. So there's low inequality, there's low unemployment. So what are some of the issues with this kind of system? Well, it's the opposite of the free market system issue. So in the free market, we said that there's no long-term thinking or no long-term planning. Well, in this kind of system, there's actually too much planning by a small group of people. The government, quote unquote. For society as a whole. So in the free market system, there was no government, so there was no long-term thinking, no long-term planning. In this kind of system, everything, the government controls everything. And so what that means is that they need to plan everything in the society. And so there's too much planning by a small group of people for society as a whole. Sometimes you'll see this called the coordination problem. It results in production inefficiencies. Now, what do we mean by that? Because the government is planning everything for everyone in society, they got to determine all the production. And so there might be a market where the demand for a certain product, let's say it's 10 units of that product, but because the government has to determine the supply for everything, they're not as involved in knowing what that demand is. And so they might say, okay, let's supply here 6 when the demand is really 10. And so that gap there is a production inefficiency. Or the other side might happen. So the demand for another product might be 10, and the government might overestimate that demand, and they might say supply 15, but the demand was really 10. Right? So really what should have happened was they should have supplied less here, they should have supplied 10, and then took in those extra resources and put it towards this product to up this supply to meet that demand. But because they're not so involved in these markets, they can't really see what's going on. They're kind of guessing these numbers here. The market isn't determining those numbers. Those producers aren't determining those numbers. Because if it was a free market and a producer sees the demand is 10, they're only supplying 6, well, they're going to want to maximize their profit, so they're going to up that supply, they're going to up that production, right? But because the government is taking care of all that, they're not going to know. They're going to either underestimate or overestimate the demand for all of these different markets, right? So it's going to be a coordination problem. And actually related to this scenario, another thing that happens, or an issue in this kind of system, is that there's no incentives. Okay, so there's little motivation to innovate. And so the producer here, where they know the demand is 10, and they're only supplying 6, they're not too concerned with upping that production because all of their profit is going to go to the government anyway. Their whole income is going to be taxed. So in a free market, it was no tax or low tax. Well, in this kind of system, basically all of your income is taxed and going to the government. So there's not too much incentive to up the supply here for that producer to work more, because in a free market, what might happen is you might get $200, let's say, for working 8 hours. But then there's a potential for you to make $150 as well if you want to work an extra 6 hours every day. And some people are going to take that, some people won't, but that choice is there. And so lots of people are going to want to work that extra 6 hours because they want that extra $150 for that day. But in a command system, whether you work 8 hours or 14 hours, you're just making that right there. And not only are you just making that, that is going to the government. So not too much incentive to work extra. And if you do work extra and do make that extra, that's going to the government as well. So no incentives to work more, little motivation to innovate. And so those are the primary issues that come up for a command system.